Hello, this is Sean, and I wanted to make a video about everything I believe a mage should know. A lot of the stuff, or at least some of the stuff in here, you will not be able to find in any other videos. You'll be able to find some in forum and other sources of text information, but I have not found a video that includes all this information, so I wanted to make one long video with timestamps on just a lot of information about mages. So let's go. First thing I want to talk about is different types of builds you can go as a mage. While you're leveling up, you can go single target ice or AoE ice. And then once you get to level 60 or 55 or wherever you feel comfortable being able to do higher end dungeons, you can spec into Arcane Power or Deep Frost while you're still working on MC, Blackwing Lair when that comes out, and Onyxia. You will be forced to use ice because of the high resistance to ice spells from all of the enemies in these encounters. Once you get to ZG, if you're geared enough, and definitely AQ, you will skip to fire, and I will go in more depth about these builds in a second. So the first thing I want to do is talk about the leveling builds. So let's go to Wowhead so I can show you the builds. Okay, so for the leveling ones, I'm going to be showing you the step-by-step progression by level. So once you get level 10, you can start putting your talent points into your talent tree. So first thing you do is go 3 out of 3 into elemental precision. This will give you a 6% hit chance right off the bat. It's really good. This is why mages only have to get 10% hit chance from their gear to get to hit cap. It's not advised to actually reach hit cap because you'll have to sacrifice a lot of gear to get to it, and we're going to go into more information about spell hit later. So you can go 2 or 3 out of 5 into improved frostbolt for now, because as a low level mage, the cast time on your frostbolts are still low, so you don't want to have too much into this. Otherwise, there's a level of diminishing returns that you get from it. So at level 15, you should have 3 out of 3 in here, or 3 out of 5, or 2 out of 5 if you're level 14 and you wanted to go into something else. So 3 out of 3, 2 out of 5, or 3 out of 5. I go 3 out of 5. And then after that, we go into 3 out of 3 Frostbite. This will make it to where any ice spell you do has a 15% chance to freeze, and the enemy will be frozen for 5 seconds. This includes Blizzard, this includes even your Frost Armor and Ice Armor, so if you get attacked by the enemy, there's a 15% chance every time you're attacked that you'll freeze the enemy. And this will help you stay alive, it'll help you have a lot of survivability while leveling up if you don't plan to do AoE. If you are doing AoE, you cannot get this, because it'll make it significantly more difficult and might get you killed. Okay, so next, you go 2 out of 2 in Improved Frost Nova. This will decrease the cooldown of Frost Nova by 4 seconds, and this will just help you stay alive longer while you're leveling. And then we go into Ice Shards, and this is going to increase the damage you do when you crit. At first, you're going to be critting very rarely, but this next talent is going to increase the likelihood that you crit by a large margin. So after we get 5 out of 5 in Ice Shards, we go over to Shatter, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is going to increase the chance that we get a critical strike by 50% to all frozen targets. This is ice spells, this is arcane missiles, this is arcane explosion, this is fire blast, fireball. Any spell that you have that deals damage can get a critical strike from this. This makes this a very huge talent while you're leveling up. So once we get this, a lot of people like to go into Ice Block. This will increase your survivability. If you pull aggro or something in a dungeon, you can use Ice Block. It costs almost no mana, and it's an instant cast. Once every 5 minutes, you'll freeze yourself for 10 seconds unless you click it off, and this will drop all aggro and will make you invulnerable for these 10 seconds. Okay, so next, what you're going to want to do is go 3 out of 3 into Frost Channeling. This will reduce your mana from frost spells by 15%. This will allow you much more casts per mana pool, and it'll allow you to have a larger uptime. And as well as this already great buff and mana reduction, it also reduces your threat by 30%, which might not seem like a huge thing right now, but by the time you're doing in-game content, you do not want to be pulling aggro as a mage because you will get one hit by many mobs. So after this, I personally don't like to go to Cold Snap, but a lot of people do like it because it basically acts as a safety net. So let's say this is a 5-minute cooldown. Maybe you need to ice block for some reason more than once in 5 minutes. Maybe you need to do it twice. Once every 10 minutes, you'll be able to reset the cooldown of all your active abilities and the ice tree. So, for example, Ice Barrier, if it's on cooldown, you need to recast it. You can recast it after Cold Snap, Ice Block, Cone of Cold, and Frost Nova. All of these abilities, you'll be able to reset the cooldown once every 10 minutes with Cold Snap. So it acts as a very good safety net. This is up to you if you want to use it. I personally did not when I was leveling up, but it's up to you. So, after you get Frost Channeling, go 1, 2 into Piercing Ice. This will increase your damage by 4%. And one more. And then this will increase it to 6%. So it's just a flat 6% damage buff to all your frost spells. This is a huge, huge buff. At this point, we go back into Improved Frostbolt because once you reach level 38, you should be getting another Frostbolt spell, or you should have gotten one pretty soon, pretty recently at this point. So we go 1, back in Improved Frostbolt again, get Ice Barrier, or get 5 and then Ice Barrier. That's up to you. So this will give you the maximum casting reduction to Frostbolt, which will be very good, obviously, because the shorter time you have casting, the less likely you are to have it interrupted, and the more, not only that, also just more times you'll be able to cast per second. Well, not cast per second, cast per minute. And Ice Barrier, it works very similar to Mana Shield, which I'm sure you've used a few times. By this point, you're level 41. So this acts similar, but instead of draining your mana, all it does is absorb it. It doesn't take your mana, which makes it very good for staying alive. It makes it very good for just trying to win in a close combat fight, so you're not getting interrupted constantly. It's very good for many things. So at this point, we have everything we need in Frost, except for this. And we just do 1, 2, and this just increases your range. You could skip this if you don't want to have it. I haven't found many reasons outside of raiding to have larger than a 30-meter radius with single target, but that's up to you. You can go into Arctic Reach right now, but more importantly, we're going to continue at level 43, or 41 if you don't choose to take Arctic Reach, into the Arcane skill tree. So we first start off with 2 Arcane Subtleties, and this will reduce the resistance of all of your spells by 10%. It'll also decrease the aggro of your arcane spells by 40, which is really good if you're doing Arcane Explosion. But the major thing is it makes it to where you'll do more damage to enemies that resist your spells. So then we go 1, 2, 3 into Arcane Focus. This reduces the resistance by 6% to arcane spells. This is not very important, but it's mostly to unlock this next step. This is a huge, huge talent. We put 5 points into Arcane Concentration. What Arcane Concentration does is it gives you a, starting at 2%, going all the way up to 10% chance for your next spell on cast to be free. So, obviously, this will allow you to have a larger uptime during longer fights, and it'll allow you to continue casting longer than some other mage that doesn't have it, because there's always that 10% chance that the next spell will be free. If you're really concerned about being mana efficient, you could use Arcane Missiles for your Arcane Concentration proc, as long as you aren't being attacked, obviously, and you don't care about damage per second, you just care about overall damage. You will do more damage with arcane missiles during your arcane concentration because there's a larger damage output from arcane missiles. However, it's lower damage per second and it has a large mana cost, so you always use Frostbolt. But however, in this one situation, if you're not concerned about damage per second, you're considered more about your mana usage, you could use arcane missiles during arcane concentration, and you'll get the most damage out of it possible. Unless you're in the fire tree, but you're not going to be that for quite a while. So, at this point, we go 1 into Arcane Resilience, 1 out of 1, and this will add 50% of the amount of int you have to your armor, and this will increase your survivability by a small margin. It's just a nice thing to have. It'll reduce the damage you're taking. Same thing as the next one, Magic Absorption. It gives you resistance to all the schools of magic by 2% each one. If you resist a spell, for example, you'll gain half of however that resistance is. So, for example, if you're 1 out of 5 and you resist that spell school, you'll gain 1% of your mana. That portion is not large. I've never actually noticed it actually proc. I'm sure it has. It's just so rare I don't notice it. So we get 1, 2, and then we get another one, 3 into this, and then 1 into Arcane Explosion. And this, I just use this as a jumping off point to get Arcane Meditation. What Arcane Meditation does is it allows you to continue regenerating mana while you're casting, and you can get up to 15%. However, we're at reach level 60, so we can't right now. But in other builds, this allows you to have a much longer uptime and will prevent you from going too quickly. Okay, so this is the single target frost leveling build. So let's real quickly do the AoE one. It's very similar. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, nope, sorry. Like I said before, Frostbite, if it procs on Blizzard, it will mess up the grouping of your enemies and might get you killed. At the very worst, and at the very best, you'll have to reset if it procs. So we go 1, 2 into Improve Frostbolt, and this will allow us to freeze our enemies during the AoE more often. I'm not going to show you how to AoE because there's hundreds of guides on how to do it. I'm sure you've seen someone do it. I'm sure you might even know how to do it yourself. And I am not an AoE spec right now, so I would have to respec to show you. But I'm sure you can find another guide on how to do that. So next, 3 out of 3 in Permafrost. This will just increase the duration of your chill effects and increase the reduction to speed. And then we go 2 out of 3 into Improved Blizzard. The reason we go 2 out of 3 instead of 3 out of 3 is because the way it interacts with Cone of Cold, the slowness from Blizzard, if you go 3 out of 3, sometimes cancels out the slow from Cone of Cold. This is just due to it being an old game, and that's just something you have to deal with occasionally. So we're going to ignore Ice Shards because Blizzard does not crit. So there's no point in putting in any points into crits when we're going to be AoEing everything. So we do Cold Snap, just so we can get another Frost Nova if we need it. Then 1, 2, Piercing Ice, 1, 2, into Arctic Reach, and this is so that we can so that we can Blizzard from further away, and this will just increase the efficiency of our AoE farming. Like I said, in single target, it's not as big of a deal while leveling up. However, it does make a huge difference when you're doing AoE farming. So 1, 2, 3 into Frost Channeling. This is mostly for the mana reduction because you're going to be doing most of your leveling on your own, so the threat doesn't matter as much. And then Ice Block, and you use Ice Block, so what you do here is you run around, you blink through the enemies, and then you Ice Block, and this will make all of them group up onto one spot. You click it off, Frost Nova, and then run away. Or if you haven't blinked it, you blink away. And this will make sure that you have perfectly grouped up all of the mobs while not taking any damage. So this is really important for AoE grinding. And then once we get that, I like to go into 1, 2, 3 and improve Cone of Cold. This is just because you're going to be using Cone of Cold very often while you're doing AoE farms, and it'll just increase the damage when you do so, because you are going to do it a lot to make sure they stay slowed. And it's just extra damage, so it's real nice. It's a larger damage buff than you're getting from Piercing Ice, because the damage boost from Piercing Ice is not very large compared with Blizzard, because of the spell coefficient for Blizzard with Frost spell power is very low, so you're not benefiting as much from Piercing Ice as you would if you were using Frostbolt. So until that moment, until now, we go Cone of Cold before it, because you're getting much more out of this talent damage-wise than you are out of Piercing Ice. So now get 3 out of 3 here, and we still need to get to here. So at this point we have to start filling other things in. So what you can do is put 2 out of 2 into Frostbolt. This doesn't matter as much because you're not going to actually be using Frostbolt very often just to finish enemies off. This is why you put it last. And then at this point we're kind of forced to go into some talents that aren't the most necessary. So we can increase Ice Shards by 2. Like I said, Blizzard doesn't crit, so there's not a large benefit from going into Ice Shards except for to get Ice Barrier itself. And what Ice Barrier does, I just explained, but just to recap, it's going to absorb a lot of the damage you take, allowing you to AoE farm much more efficiently. And now once we get to level 40, we're completed with our skill tree for Frost, and we go back over to Arcane again. And 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 1, 2, 3, and I put the points into Arcane Explosion before Magic Absorption for AoE, just for the fact that you're going to be using Arcane Explosion to finish off enemies that are still close together. It's more efficient, and you'll be able to crit more often, meaning you'll do more damage and have to use use Arcane Explosion less times, meaning it'll be more mana efficient. So now we put 1 point into Magic Absorption, and then 3 more into Arcane Meditation, and then just to finish off, you put 2 more into Magic Absorption. So one thing I want to explain before I continue on to the PvE builds are these 3 talents. You'll see different guides say to put points into Magic Attunement, Counterspell, Mana Shield. You can all sub this Arcane Explosion for these if you please. I personally don't, but just to explain what they do. So this is going to increase the amount of damage you can absorb from Dampen Magic spell, but I don't go it because the large mana cost of using Dampen Magic usually is not worth the it's not really worth the amount of damage it's absorbing. It's very minimal, and I'd get much more out of just casting 2 more Frostbolts, for example, out of this mana. And then Mana Shield, you have Ice Barrier, so there's no real reason to use Mana Shield unless you want to use it when your Ice Barrier is on cooldown, but I prefer not to use Mana Shield unless I really need to, just because of the mana absorption it does. It takes your mana to protect you, and it's not very efficient. But you could go either this or the next one, Improved Counterspell, which will give your Counterspell a chance to silence the enemy. And both of these are pretty good talents for PvP, but this is for PvE, so Counterspell is okay while you're leveling up. I use the base version a lot when fighting mages to keep them from damaging me from far away. However, while leveling up, you're not going to find many mobs that have multiple schools of magic, so there's no reason to silence them. Just counterspelling is good enough. So I'd prefer to put my talent points into more damage. Okay, so this concludes the PvE talents for leveling up. And I'm going to go into the PvE talents for raiding. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is Winter's Chill versus Arcane Power. Arcane Power builds are built to do the most damage possible and have almost no survivability outside of just Frost Nova, pretty much. They do way more damage than Winter's Chill or what's also known as Deep Frost Mages. However, they are easy to get killed, so while you're still learning it, you're going to die a lot more often than you're used to as a mage. So I advise beginners, at least at first, when they start raiding, to try to go Deep Frost or Winter's Chill to get the hang of raiding, learn the mechanics before you go the more risky, higher DPS build of Arcane Power. That being said, a normal build for a raid comp would be 6 mages. 5 of them are Arcane Power, 1 is Winter's Chill, and you can switch that to 3 and 2 in case one of the Winter's Chill mage dies. It'll be a huge DPS loss. And just to explain what Winter's Chill does, at 5 out of 5, it stacks up each time that mage frostbolts, 1 to 5, and each time it's a 2% more chance to crit. So fully stacked after 5 frostbolts is a 10% extra chance to crit, which is a huge buff to DPS, especially while using Arcane Power. So you only need 1 mage to keep Winter's Chill up, and the rest can do Arcane Power. But like I said, if that one mage dies, it's a huge loss, so that's why I prefer to go 2. But that's just personal preference. Okay, so to show you the Winter's Chill first. 3 out of 3, 5 out of 5, 5 out of 5, 1, 1, and this is just so you have a little bit more control over AoE pools, for example, Phase 2 and Ragnaros, and the mob spawns and Nefarian, as well as the whelps from Onyxia. So that's why I put 1 point into the Improved Blizzard, so you can slow them down and make them easier to kite. Going on from here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is Winter's Chill that I was explaining before. And then 1 into Ice Bear, and then back into Arcane. You don't want to put too many points into these extra skills that aren't actually going to make much of a difference. I mean, you could put them into these 3 if you really, really wanted to, but you'll get almost no benefit out of this during raids, except for when, for example, the imps in Molten Core, or some of the mobs when you're fighting Nefaria and Blackwing Lair. So I skipped these 3 because you're not going to be freezing enemies during raids. So I'll go into Arcane. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, and that's all you've got for Winter's Chill. And like I said, this is much easier than the Arcane Power. It has consistent DPS. It's still good DPS, but it's not as much. But it is an important role as it buffs the DPS of all the rest of the mages in the raid. So I'm going to go ahead and clear just the Frost tree, because all these are going to remain the same. So off of here, we go into Arcane Mind. We haven't gone past here in any of the other builds, so I'm going to explain these. So Arcane Mind, each talent you put into it is going to increase your maximum mana by 2%. This gives you a long uptime, much larger than you'll have as a Frost Mage, but this is important because you'll see in a second you will be using slightly more mana. So we put 1 into Presence of Mind. Every 3 minutes you'll get a free insta-cast. I like to use this at the end of my Arcane Power rotation to get 1 extra hit off. And then we put 3 into Arcane Instability, and this is going to add 3% more spell damage and 3% critical strike. This is really good and is required to get Arcane Power. But as you can see, we only have 29, so we have to come back and put 1 into magic absorption before we can get the final arcane power. So, like I was saying earlier, this is the reason that you go all the way down to arcane. This is when this is active, it's an active ability that's every 3 minutes. So what you do is, once there are 5 stacks of Winter's Chill on the enemy, please wait for this or you will lose DPS. Wait till there's 5 stacks, then pop arcane power, and then this is going to increase the damage of your spells by 30% and also increase the mana usage by 30%. That's why it's very important to have Arcane Mind, and it's very important to have Arcane Meditation. And this will make it to where in the last 15 seconds, and this is going to greatly increase the amount of damage you can do. I can, for example, when I'm fighting Magmadar, with 450 spell power, I can hit up to 3.3 or 3.4k if I crit when I'm using Arcane Power. So this is going to make you do a lot of damage. So now we go into the Frost Tree, because an Arcane Mage is still using Frost spells, because there's very, very few situations where you'd want to use Arcane Missiles. So 3 out of 3 in Elemental Precision, 5 out of 5 in Improved Frostbolt, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in Ice Shards, 3 into Piercing Ice, 3 into Frost Channeling, and then 1, the last one, into Arctic Reach. So the reason I put 1 into Arctic Reach, and in the past, before I was raiding, when I was still doing dungeons, still preparing, I put 1 into Improved Blizzard. But once I got to raiding, I realized that the 1 out of 2 in Arctic Reach is basically required. This is because for many mechanics, the range of the boss is 30 meters. By having 1 out of 2 in Arctic Reach, you'll have a range of 33. So you'll be able to completely avoid a lot of mechanics while still doing damage if you have just these 3 extra meters. And I'm going to now show you kind of the rotation you do when arcane power is off of cooldown. Okay. Hello, so now I'm going to be showing you the proper way to do the arcane power rotation. I'm here in SM just because that's where I was for another portion of this video coming up, because I did it out of order. Okay, so this is a low level. I'm going to wait for her to actually start.
You will not.
So as we can see, Winter's Chill is going up. We wait until it actually hits 4, and then we can start our rotation, because by the time we cast, 5 should be up. It's not up, but that's fine.
Burn, righteous fire.
Oh, and he's immune, but this is the optimal way because you have the highest chance to crit when there's Winter's Chill at max, because you can see the additional 10%. Let's see if we got that Hypnotic Blade. Nope. But yeah, you just have to wait till Winter's Chill is at 5 stacks. Usually people do it immediately, they just blow their load immediately. But most bosses will be dead before you get a second rotation, so it's just not worth it to do it at the very beginning, because you're only going to get 1 rotation anyways, so you might as well do it when you have the optimal timing. Okay, thank you. Hello, so this portion is going to be about fire build. For the fire build, you are not able to do it for the first 3 phases during Blackwing Lair, Nixia, or Molten Core. That is because all the mobs in these raids are either resistant or immune to fire damage. So you are not going to be able to use it in these dungeons for the fact that they're resistant to it, so it's not going to do damage. And another reason, your gear does not give you enough mana to be able to support this kind of build. So you're going to have to wait till ZG or AQ to be able to even start. So let's get going on the talent tree, and I'll kind of explain how this talent tree build works as I'm going, because like I said, it's not one of the phases, it's phase 2 right now, so I can't show you this build because it doesn't work on anything. So let's start off with 3 out of 3 Elemental Precision. This works on Frost and Fire, so this is just a straight 6% hit chance straight out of the box just from your talents. 5 out of 5 in Improved Fireball, to get the reduced cast time, 2 out of 2 in flamethrowing to be able to stay further away from the boss, stay closer to the healers, and just avoid mechanics. So then this is part of the meat and potatoes of the whole fire build. So you could 5 out of 5 and ignite. So what this does is when you use this, when you have this, your critical strikes from fire damage will cause 40% burn for 4 seconds, like it says. But this will be refreshed every single time you crit. So, for example, if you use Fire Blast and it crits, it'll do 40% of that extra damage over the next 4 seconds. However, this is not limited to your own crits. So if anyone else in your party crits again, it'll continue ticking with the original damage. What makes it so powerful is just that. You use Pyroblast, and if it crits, it's going to start a huge chain where everyone's just critting over and over until that person just has so much threat they have to stop attacking, and then you reset it. I'm going to go a little bit more in detail in a second when I get to these 2 talents. So, next is Pyroblast. It's the most damaging spell a mage has. So, and it's pretty much the whole backbone of this whole build. Like I said, I'm going to go into it a little bit more in a second. So next, 2 in Burning Soul. This is going to, the first portion, the 70% chance not to be interrupted, doesn't matter as you're in a raid, you're not going to be getting attacked much. But it's mostly the 30% threat reduction because you're going to be doing a lot of damage with these ticks of Pyroblast fall off. So the next is into 3 in Master of Elements. This is very good just for the fact that fire takes a lot of mana to use. So if you crit, which you do crit loading when you're doing fire because you need the crits to continue the ticks of the Pyroblast to continue going, and that's where a large majority of the damage is coming from. And this is going to refund 30% of the mana each time, which is really good and keeps you up and not So next, we go over to 3 out of 3 and improve Scorch. So what Scorch does is you can kind of compare it to Winter's Chill for Frost Mages. It stacks up to 5, and each one of those stacks will cause 3% vulnerability, so they'll take 15% more damage for the next 30 seconds each time that it goes off. So what you do is you have at least 5. The optimal comp is 6 or 7, but you have at least 5 fire mages. All 5 of them start off the battle with Scorch. That gets the maximum stack right there in 1 tick. Then you follow up by Combusting, which is going to increase the chance that you're going to get a crit by 10%. Then you're going to Pyroblast, and all 5 of those people are going to do this. And that's going to almost ensure that Pyroblast is going to be the ticking damage. Occasionally you're not going to get that and it'll be a fireball, but that's okay. You'll just have to wait and try again in a second if you think there's not enough damage, or you can just roll with it until the threat builds up to where you redo this cycle. So, like I just said, at one point you're going to have so much threat that you're going to have to stop damaging. So the person who is getting the ticking Pyroblast will stop completely. They're not going to cast anything, or if they do, they're going to start casting Scorch to keep this improved Scorch on there. So like I said, you want 5 people to do the whole rotation I just said at the very beginning. But the 6th person, what you want them to do at least once every 30 seconds is cast Scorch to keep the 5 stacks of Scorch going. And what the person who just stopped aggro, they just stopped attacking to reset their aggro, what they're going to do is that's going to be their new job. They're going to start being the one doing the Scorch so that their aggro can go down, and it's just going to go like that until the boss is down. So what we do now is 3 out of 3 in critical mass to increase your critical strike by 6. So you're going to have a massive chance to crit with fire. So you're going to get getting lots of mana back. You're going to be doing lots of damage. And it's just going to be a really big team effort. It's really different from the way Frost works. Frost, there's 1 or 2 people putting Wizard's Chill, and then the rest are kind of the stars of the show, just doing all the damage. But when it comes to fire, everyone's participating in the same exact thing on a rotation, and they're just making sure they have the highest crit so that they can keep the ignite chain going, because the majority of the damage is going to be from the burn from this pyroblast. Okay, so next you get Blast Wave. This is good for AoE. It stuns enemies for 6 seconds as well, but it's mostly so that you can go on further into the tree without having to get this, or this, or this. And the reason you don't get Incinerate, a lot of guides on the internet will say to put 2 out of 2 into Incinerate, is because if you crit, so for say example, everyone's scorching at the same time, but this increases the crit chance of scorch. Maybe someone lags and accidentally scorches again. That crits. So, and Scorch has a much shorter cast time than Pyroblast. So that, if someone scorches and it crits, that's going to be the damage that's going to go. So everyone's going to have to stop what they're doing for 4 seconds, wait for Ignite to go down, go away, and then they're going to have to try to Pyroblast again. But this time, Combustion's not going to be on cooldown, so it's going to be a much more difficult task to ensure that that Pyroblast hits. So to minimize the chance of that happening, even in the chance that someone accidentally scorches, we don't put the 4 extra crit chances into it, because Scorch doesn't do very much damage, so even if it crits, it's not going to do that much. It's nothing compared to the ticking damage from Pyroblast, which you might end up sacrificing, causing a huge DPS loss if you do this. So we don't put the 2 into here. So next up is 5 out of 5 into firepower. This gives you 10% extra damage with your fire spells. And then the last thing is combustion. And once every 3 minutes, you're going to be able to increase your crit chance by 10% until you crit. And this is going to last until you've critted 3 times. So this is a huge part of the rotation to ensure that you get the Pyroblast, because you're going to keep Pyroblasting until it goes off. But like I said, if someone messes up and scorches and it crits, it's a huge issue. So we don't do this. And this also allows us to be more mana efficient, because we'll be able to get Arcane Meditation out of these points. So what we do, 2 Arcane Subtlety, 3 Arcane Focus, 5 Arcane Concentration for more mana efficiency, 1 Arcane Resilience, and then we're going to go 1, 2, 3 into Arcane Explosion. This is just for some extra AoE damage. You could put this into Magic Absorption if you want to instead. It's up to you, but we put 1 into Magic Absorption. This is my opinion. These 2 are interchangeable. You can put 4 into here. Any number of those. It's your opinion. You can put them into here if you want to do some PvP. It's up to you. But the most important part is to put 2 into here so we can continue having 10% of our mana regenerating while we are in combat. And this is going to make it to where you can easily start doing fire in CG, because you'll have much more mana efficiency, because a lot of the fire builds you'll find on the internet for this kind of thing will not have Arcane Meditation. And another thing, if you're good on hit chance, if somehow this situation arises that you're good on hit chance, but you're having mana issues, what you can do is go 2 out of 3 into Elemental Precision and 3 out of 3 into Arcane Meditation. So that's a full explanation of all of the builds that you'll want to do for PvE and leveling, and a breakdown of every reason why you would do each of the talents. Okay, so now I'm going to continue on to stat priority. So with Frost, hit chance is number 1 and spell power is number 2. I'd recommend, if you're giving up any more than 10 spell power, do not go for hit chance, because you can convert anything, any stat on this stat priority into spell power to be able to compare it. And hit chance will usually round out to approximately 10%, not 10%, 1% of whatever your average hit is. So for example, for me, on average, I hit about 907, 903. So I'm going to, on average, the first hit chance I add is going to be 9 spell power. So do not give more than 10 to 12 spell power away for 1 hit chance, because in the long run it's going to negatively affect you. Even though in the short run it's going to seem like you're hitting more, it all averages out over a long period of time. Just trust me, that's how the statistics works. So from there you go into spell crit, and then from there you go to intelligence, and that's for Frost. And for Fire, your spell crit loading, so you can make sure those ignite ticks are going off and are never being lost. Then spell power, then hit chance, and then intelligence. The reason hit chance is so far down is because by this point there is such good itemization. There's going to be a hit chance just naturally on your Abyss. You won't have to trade hit chance for spell power usually. It'll just be there together. Okay, so let's move on to converting everything to spell power. So a lot of Abyss lists are okay. Not everything is always correct, and if you want to go ahead and just believe it blindly, that's okay. But if you're in between, like you're not at your Abyss yet, you can use these formulas to help kind of see which piece of gear is better. These formulas were, except for the first one, all these formulas were made by me, so there may be some small issues. I see a typo right here already, and I'll explain that when we get to it, but okay, let's go. So it can be converted to critical chance because every 59.5 int equals 1 crit. So let's say if you have like 10 int, you'll have like about somewhere around the range of like 17.5% crit. That's not 0.175% crit. That's not exact, but it's close enough. It's just to give you a good example. I'm going to bring up a piece of gear that's best in slot at phase 6 and convert it all to spell power just to show you how this all works. And so for Frost, you start off 440. This is the base damage of your max rank. Max rank Frost spell is 440. The base damage, the lowest damage you could possibly do with it. And you add the Frost spell power, and this is just to get the spell power. You should know how to do this much already. But something you might not know about is spell coefficient, which is what this 0.0x is. This is your that's what this 0.814% is. Sorry, that's my bad. This 0.0x portion is the crit chance, and in this case it's the hit chance. So this is the spell coefficient. So every spell is affected by spell power differently. That's why when you're blizzarding and you have 400 spell power, you're not hitting for ticks of 550. You're doing like, say like range of 170 potentially. It's because of the spell coefficient. Not every spell is affected the same way. Frostbolt, 81.4%, that's why it's 0.814, is affected by 81.4% of the spell power is converted to damage. So this formula right here is to convert the crit from crit to spell power without diminishing returns. So this little portion right here, which I added on the end of both of these formulas, is to adjust for diminishing returns. And what I mean by this is, for example, you have, let's say, you have 50% chance to crit. Getting 51%, yeah, it's an upgrade, but it's not as big as an upgrade as, for example, 25 to 26s because it's not making as large as a percentage difference to getting a crit. You're much more likely to crit from 50 than you are from 25. So the 0.01 upgrade is a much larger upgrade at 25% than it would be 50. So what I do is I get the percentage difference basically, subtract it from 1, and then multiply it. This is the same thing as hit. The only difference is because if you have all your points into the elemental precision, you already have the 6. So to get the spell hit cap, you only need 10. So for example, if your new one, you'll have 6. It'll be 60. So 1 minus 6. So you'll only get 40% efficiency out of that hit chance from 5. So that's how I get this formula. That's how this just works in general. And then for fire, the major difference is, like I said, there's a typo right here. There's 10 instead of old. It's just because I'm bad at copying and pasting. That's my bad. But the difference is, as you can see, I just say spell power here, and there's no divided by 0.814. This is because the spell coefficient for fireball is 1. It's not 81%, it's just 100%, 1.00. So we do not have to divide after the fact because divided by 1 is pointless, as we all know. And obviously, if during these two, if you had 0% crit before, yes, if you put it in a calculator, it's going to give you 0.01 divided by 0 is an error. So you just get rid of this portion. If you start at 0 for some reason, which you're not going to start at 0, and you get 0.01, just 1. You ignore these portions if you're starting at 0 crit for some reason. So that's how you convert everything to spell power, make it a little bit easier to kind of weigh your options. And I do this every single time I get a piece of gear to see exactly how it stacks up to what I have currently. And this portion will be in the next portion. Thank you. Hello, so in this section I'm going to be talking about how to AoE farm when you're not AoE spec, and the usage of Fire Blast as an ice mage. So let's get to the portion where I can do a little bit of AoE. So let me just do a single pull just to show you how you would normally use Fire Blast. So you just Fire Blast until there's not enough time to cast another one, so you just Fire Blast to kill it. This is how most people use the spell. However, if you want to be getting the most DPS possible, you can use it off of cooldown. It won't make a huge difference in fights like these. Like for example, this one, it actually slowed it down. But in longer fights that you aren't going to run out of mana, that is an important portion, because Fire Blast does use a large amount of mana in comparison to how much damage it's getting you. If it's a longer fight like a boss fight and you know you're not going to you can use it off of cooldown to get on average about 10 to 12 extra DPS. It's not that big, but that's about 600 to 720 extra damage per minute. It's still pretty good. I don't do it a lot of the time because there's not very many instances where I do it because I'm not doing dungeons anymore. I'm only raiding, so I would go if I did it, but on several dungeon bosses you could still do it and it would be fine. Okay, so let me show you how you can do AoE farming without actually being AoE spec. So let's just attack that guy way over there. We LOS around the corner. Wait for them all to get over here. And then we freeze them. Then we use Mana Shield, and we Blizzard. We use the Mana Shield so that they can't interrupt our spell cast, so we can get the entire cast off. This is why you can't do it for mobs close to your level. So we also use the Cone of Cold so that we're able to slow them down, so we're able to avoid a lot of the damage. And just like that, we were able to do like a 6-man pull easily. We didn't come anywhere near to dying, and we didn't come anywhere near to ooming. So I use this method as an arcane Mage. I have Arcane Power. I have no points into Improved Blizzard. I have no points into Permafrost. I have used this method to do farms for SM. You can do it for SM. So you could, for example, sell runs to people so you could get 40, 50 gold an hour doing something pretty easy. And yeah, you don't even need a respec to do it. You can successfully do it for all of SM. I've done it before, and you can also do normal non-elites up to level 55 is the highest I've tried. I've done up to like 7 or 8 man pools of level 55s, and I've been completely fine. Okay, that's it for this section. Okay, so like I said, we're going to be converting an item, the Sapphiran's left eye in this case. Item phase 6, I'm going to convert all the stats that can be converted into meaningful data into spell power. Stamina obviously doesn't matter for Mage, so we're just going to ignore it. So let's bring out the calculator. So 8 int, so 8 divided by 59.5 gives us 0.134%. So we're going to add this on to the already 1%, and we'll get 0.01134. So first, 440 plus 520, we're just going to say 520, just because it's phase 6, you're going to have a lot of spell power by now, so bam, 960. And from there, now we multiply this by 0.01134. We get 10.8864 for our spell power without factoring the coefficient and without factoring diminishing returns. So now we're going to factor in the 81.4%. So how it's weird is the number's going to go up, but that's because this is frost spell power, so we have to convert it to normal spell power now. So divide this by 0.814, and we get it is 13.373 spell power, just normal spell power, not frost spell power. So now let's multiply this by 1 minus, so let's say we're at 15 for some reason. So 0.01134 is the new versus the old, which is, let's say, 0.14. So what we get is that from the crit alone, there is 12.29 spell power on this item. And we can add that to the normal spell power, so let's just add 26. Currently we're at 38 spell power. Looking at this, it doesn't look like it would have more spell power than for example, the Tome of Ice that you can get phase 2 right now, that has 34 spell power on it. But because we can convert this and this into spell power, it's already at 38 just because of statistics. And now let's go ahead and add the hit chance, which is very similar. So let's just remember this 38.29. And let's just press, oops, back, whatever. So let's just clear the calculator. It'll be right there, so we won't lose it. So 960. And then once again, it's 1 hit chance. Let's see. Yep, 1 hit chance. So, oops, I messed up. So 960 multiplied by 0.01. So we get 9.6. And then we divide this by 0.814, because once again, it's a frost. That was the frost spell power. We divided by the spell coefficient to get it back to normal spell power from frost spell power. We don't have to do this for fire, like I said, because the spell coefficient for a fireball is 100%. So we get that before diminishing returns, it is 11.79 spell power. And now let's factor in. So let's say this one's easier than the crit because we can deal with more reasonable numbers. Let's say we're now going to be at 6. So this 6 divided by 10, that's going to give you 60%. This is going to be 0.4. So let's just multiply this by 0.4. So we get 4.7 more spell power from this hit chance. So altogether we get, oh, that's actually a pretty nice number. We're going to get 43 spell power, just on the nose. Well, 43.00 at least. So 43.007 spell power total from this item right here. Despite it saying 26, we can use statistics to convert it to 43.00 spell power with the int, the hit chance, the crit, and just the spell power. Okay. And that's what I do every time I get a new item. Every time I see an item on the BIS list, I compare them to see if they actually compare properly and see which one's actually the best. Thank you. So there are a few things I want to add at the very end here, just to finish things off. Just a couple things I forgot. Just some quick little tips. So, if you're on the Lion side, I can't really help you as far as this goes, but as far as Horde goes, the best PvE race, at least, for mages is the Troll. They don't get as much int from their just racial bonuses they naturally get as undead do, but they have one very important skill that works itself very well into the arcane power little rotation, and that's berserking. So it costs 85 mana, so it's not a big deal at all. And it for 10 seconds it will speed up my spellcast between 10 to 30%. 30% if I'm very low, and 10% if I'm at full health. So what I like to do with this is, I don't, unless my healers heal me to full during the raid, obviously I can't do anything about that, but I like to stay somewhere around here, just in case, like, for example, Magmadar's fire, or I'm in Gehenna's Rain of Fire, or I get hit by if I get hit by Rag's Wrath. I'm not going to die in one hit, but if I pop Berserking, I'll get around a 20% boost to my spellcasting, which will greatly increase the amount of damage I can do with my arcane power rotation. So what I'll do is, I'll wait, like I said before, wait till the 5 Winter's Chill, I'll pop arcane power, I'll pop Talisman of Ephemeral Power, Arcane Power, and Berserking all in the same tick, but you won't have this, because it's just a raid drop, so you'll pop these 2, or if you have it, pop these 3. Like it says, 10 seconds in, it'll drop. So as soon as this drops, what I'll do is I will, at that same tick as it fires, I'll fire off my Presence of Mind, and this will give me it'll give me the global cooldown, and then I'll get time for one more cast. What you can do is you can also try to do 2 more casts. This is actually probably the preferable way. You can do Berserking. Once Berserking ends, 2 more casts while Arcane Power, and in the same tick, if you do it perfectly, you can get 3 attacks out. So you can get 2 attacks with Frostbolt, just naturally casting, after Berserking's over, and then you can get the Presence of Mind if you do it tick perfect. And just one more tip about how to deal with items like this, the ones that have on use spell power increases, how to convert that to spell power. I'll just go over that real quick at the end here. So what you want to do is, as you can see, it converts it increases it by 175 for 15 seconds every minute and 30 seconds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it to the nearest minute, so I'm just going to multiply it by 2. So let's say, just open up a calculator here. So let's just go 440. Let's see. Let's just go base spell power. So 440. Well, first what you want to do is, so 60 divided by 2.5. That's the number of casts you're going to get per minute. Because if you're tick perfect, every 2.5 seconds you'll get the Frostbolt out. So you'll get 24 Frostbolts out in 1 minute. So we multiply this by 3 so that we can make it easier to compare to this. So we get 72, and then we just multiply this by 440. So in 3 minutes, we'll get out 31,680 minutes with no spell power whatsoever, just to make this easy calculation that's not specific to me. So then what we do to get this, it's a little bit more tricky. So the 2.5, so 15 divided by 2.5, so we can get 6. We can get 6 each time it procs. So this means that we can get that every minute and a half, so there will be 12 overall in the 3 minutes. That will have 175 more power. So what we do is we do 60 times 440, gets 26,400, and then we add 175 to 440, so we get 615 from that. So, and then we add 615 times 12, because we're going to get 12 casts out of it in that time. So we get 33,780. So what we can do now is subtract 31,680, and this is how much damage we're getting extra per minute. We're getting 2,100 extra damage per minute. It's very... And so then we average this out. So in 3 minutes, we're getting 2,100 extra damage. So then we divide this by 72 casts, and we get that it is 29 damage per second on average. You can treat this on use effect if you're tick perfect, always using it off cooldown. This is equivalent to 29 damage per second. That's how you can deal with these harder to convert items. Like several trinkets have this kind of thing, and that's how you deal with them. You can round them to the nearest minute by just using, for example, this one was easy, minute 30, just multiply it by 2, and then compare it to the base thing. And that's all you have to do to find out how to use that. And just a quick tip, I'll just go over a little bit of consumable stuff. Obviously, you're going to want to farm some demonic runes, dark runes if you don't have the time to get the demonic runes. And you can use your elixir of frost power and your arcane elixir or greater arcane elixir, and at the same time, these do stack. The biggest thing is that like an int buff goes, the consumable from the Blasted Lands, I believe it is. Let's check real quick. Yeah, the Blasted Lands. That one does stack with your Arcane Brilliance, but Elixir of Greater Intellect doesn't. However, I do usually keep some, just in case, for example, you get res like in the middle of a fight. You are not going to want to waste pretty much all the rest of the mana that you have just to give yourself 31 int real quick. You can just pop one of these elixirs and it'll give you 25. Yeah, it'll get overwritten next time you get buffed, but at least it'll give you almost half of another crit chance, as well as just more mana. So you'll have more room to regenerate. And those are the last things I wanted to remark. That should be it. Thank you guys.